That's right. 5 o'clock on a Wednesday, we go inside the war room. So, let's see who we got. Obviously, Bruce. We've got Gaydos. We've got the president and CEO of HighGround. Chuck Coughlin is back in the seat. Hello, Chuck.
Here, brother. Here with my friends in the symposium.
All right. I like it. Democratic strategist Tony Cani is back on the show. Tony, good to see you.
Good to see you. I'm happy to be here.
And we got former Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb, ran for the Senate. I voted for you.
Thank you. I appreciate the vote.
I wasn't voting for. I wasn't doing that. I wasn't going the other way on that one.
I voted for myself too.
Well, you should.
Never would have understood that.
All right, so let's get into it. Goodness, it's just a whirlwind. I mean, every day you wake up over the last 2 weeks, Trump is doing something different. So why don't we start with immigration raids? I think one of the interesting things is that Governor Katie Hobbs says she would not help the Trump administration with immigration raids. I'm going to start with the sheriff. You are still the sheriff. Are you helping Trump with the immigration raids? And if so, how do you do it?
Yeah, for sure. Look, when I heard her say that, I couldn't do it because I'm not the sheriff now, but I would have gotten right on social media and said, we appreciate the governor's concern, but she's not in law enforcement. She may be able to dictate what the state troopers do, but on a local and a sheriff level, county level, we dictate what we're going to do on that. And look, there are people that came into this country illegally, whether you find it politically not your cup of tea. They broke the law when they came into this country illegally. Now, what they're going after, the criminals and the people that the judges have determined don't belong here. They don't have a legitimate asylum claim. So I think that Governor Hobbs should be a little bit more tempered and say, look, we're going to support them and those people. Yeah. And I would have liked to have seen that, but she doesn't speak for law enforcement.
Can I help understand a little bit? Because you were sheriff up until recently, I would say. What did you as sheriff or your department do to go after these people? I mean, I assume you were doing it on some level already.
So we don't have any, up until this last law that was passed that I'm sure will get challenged, there was no state law that allowed us to go out and actually arrest people for being in the country illegally. Where we helped was we were a 287G jail, which means that we worked with ICE. We were one of the only ones in the state. And what that meant is if you committed a crime in this state. Then
another crime other than being here illegally.
DUI, assault, murder, any of those. We would then process you and figure out you're not in the country legally. We would notify ICE, and ICE would then put a detainer. Under the previous Trump administration, they deported majority of those. They came and got them. Under this Biden administration, they weren't picking anybody up. And then what we're forced to do is put them back out onto the street.
You can only hold them for a period of time.
And then the other thing we would do is we would work in conjunction with Border Patrol with our helicopters. We were out there, but we always had to have some contingency of Border Patrol with us to be able to do that. Right. And even then, we would drop them off and we would wait and just assist them in that. So
I don't mean to beat up. I got a lot of questions for you. Are you in favor? I haven't heard anybody say we shouldn't deport criminals. I haven't heard that argument yet. Maybe somebody's making it. I haven't heard it. Are you in favor of going after people just because they're here illegally, just grabbing them, show me your papers? Are you here? If not, we're going to kick you out?
Look, I don't think I think that the media wants to push it to where that's happening. The reality is the list is so long of people that are criminals in
the bad
country.
guys already.
The bad guys already. People that have committed crimes in our country that were wanted before they came back or they've committed crimes now. I mean, there's some bad people out there, and that list is very long. Yeah. And then there's another 1 million plus people, and that list is growing every day of people that the judges have said, you can't be here. So we got a lot of lists of people to go through before you're ever going to get to that point. Okay. Is there going to be some collateral pickups like, hey, we're looking for Chuck, and we find 3 more people. You have to. You cannot wave a wand and say, we're not going to take, you broke the law. That has to carry some weight. If not, we're a lawless society.
Yeah. We're inside the war room. That is the voice of former Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb. We've got Democratic strategist Tony Cani and the president and CEO of HighGround, Chuck Coughlin. And we're talking about Trump's immigration raids. Okay. So what do you guys think of the televised raids? I said it the other day. It's like the show Cops. Except it's ICE.
It's just missing the bad boys.
Well, you know
theme.
me, I don't like to televise anything.
I was going to say, right. Sheriff Lamb.
Chuck, let's start with you, Chuck. Dr. Phil is out there and he's watching some of these people get arrested and he's on television and it's showing the American people, we're going after the bad guys. Is it a good idea?
Trump. It's Trump.
It's Trump.
Whether it's a good idea or not, it's Trump and it's theater. And he's going to run those numbers until, as the sheriff just said, you start arresting people who are working, who are here or separating families or doing something like that. When you run into that hurdle, that's going to start to spin the other way.
Yeah.
I don't think, I agree with him entirely that if you're here illegally, and I've seen them deporting people to Argentina and Brazil and as we saw Peru and some of these other places, I imagine, and they're coming out of Chicago. They're doing a bunch of these raids in Chicago, which has this high intensity of gang and cartel activity. So I imagine there's a lot of intelligence going on way above my pay grade that they're wrapping up these people and rolling them out. So the minute they hit a problem, that's going to be a problem.
Tony, how worried are you that they'll stop going after the criminals who are, a rapist or somebody battered a woman or, you've robbed a store? How worried are you and how worried is the left that they're going to go and they're going to take grandma out of a house?
Yeah, I'm worried about it.
You are?
Yeah, I am worried about it. I mean, I think part of it is because since this is being televised, there is this fear that is being passed on to families and to people about this because, that it's a legitimate risk. It's happened before. It could happen again. I think that one of the problems I have with the way they're doing this, where they're picking 3 cities, I think, and then they're going to focus on those 3 cities, and it's basically saying, here's the TV schedule for this week, is that if there isn't stuff, if they don't get good stuff, like they have to produce for the cameras now.
Yeah.
They're doing it for the cameras. And so I do think that, look, I was joking with the sheriff and Chuck before the show. I wish that Biden would have televised some of the things that he accomplished in the last administration. I think we've been in a different situation.
It would have been a short show.
I knew you were ready for it. When I said it, but you
underhanded that one.
It's fine. I mean, look, we lost, right? We lost.
Couple of water projects. There were things that
there's
happened.
a lot of good infrastructure stuff that Trump is very much going to take credit for over the next couple of months. But the point being, I understand this is the way governance works in America right now, is that you're governing by TV and social media, and
Can I just please? Because I was with Dr. Phil and Tom Holman. We have a mandate. There's a mandate from the American people that says we want to fix the border issue. They also understand that there's a very fine balance of that you could easily lose the trust of the people. So I think that they're televising a lot of this is, A, to send a message like, hey, if you're in the country illegally, you can get deported. And everybody should be worried. If I crossed over, I've lived in plenty of other countries. If I lived in that country and knew I was there illegally, you better believe I'd sleep with one eye open. And they should. They broke the law when they came to the country.
But you have to change the law in order to change the immigration system. And my concern right now is we are now back into this executive order mantra. As we remember, Obama did DACA with, and I said McCain at the time, you have to get this done in the law. He goes, Obama screwed it up because he made it an executive order. We're not going to touch it now. And I go, you have to do this. Now, what Trump is doing is making political crises out of all this. And the question I have is, where do our colleagues, the Democrats, end up lining up if that immigration bill, which I had hoped would pass,
I was in favor,
would come back? Because we need laws.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an important point, is that Trump killed that immigration bill, the one that Sinema negotiated with Republicans. And one of the things that it would have done is it would have helped make the list that you're talking about
best bill
bigger, because more people would have been able to go through the actual system.
Right.
Because
of judges, more change of the asylum laws that I think are being used improperly.
Title 8 is the law that says you can't come into the country illegally. I get it. I support it. I agree.
You got to fix asylum.
Immigration,
fix
Congress,
asylum.
Senate has to fix that piece of it.
Right. Yeah.
But right now, the law is Title 8, and it says you can't come into the country.
There's just value for the Republican Party, who have blocked a lot of these immigration reforms, right? And then when they finally had this chance, that now you can make a crisis out of all this. And so, I hope we pass an immigration bill.
Amen.
Why not HR 2?
Let's get it, because Well, we'll go into
All right. Let's
One thing at a time.
Let's pause it there. We're inside the war room. Former Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb. We've got Democratic strategist Tony Cani, and there's Chuck Coughlin. When we come back, Trump says immigration authorities can arrest people at churches and schools. Should ICE be going into churches and schools? That's coming up next on the War Room.
Here we are. Pretty cool. Got a great group of folks inside the war room today. Former Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb, Democratic strategist Tony Cani, and the president and CEO of HighGround Consulting. Political insider. Wonkiness. He's the guy I go to explain everything.
Yeah.
Chuck Coughlin.
Roundly well hated.
Yes,
man.
yeah. That's what it takes to do that job, man. Right? So
Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, Gaydos, you gave us a bit of a heads up as to where we're going in this one, and it has to do with an order that was rescinded and a concern that I think a lot of people have, even people who might be very in favor of, quote, getting rid of the criminals that are here illegally. Does that extend to third grade and churches?
Yeah, I'd like to know why would we go into a school and remove a child? So immigration authorities can now enter schools, healthcare facilities, like a hospital, places of worship to conduct arrests. I don't know if this is a stupid question, but I'm interested in it, so I'm going to ask it. Why would ICE go in and take a third grader out of a classroom? And are we going to see that, guys?
Well, first of all, I don't think they're taking third graders out.
What do you think?
So I was a gang and drug detective for a long time. And the majority of the gang members we dealt with were in this 14 to 17-year-old range.
Okay.
Very violent
High schoolers.
criminals. Look, when we arrested one of the guys from the Gilbert Goons, we arrested him in his school. Why? Because that is a very controlled atmosphere where it's safe for everybody that's arresting them. I get it. The optics look bad, but there's nothing in the law that says you can't arrest somebody at a church or a school. It's not it's not where we're looking to arrest people, but what we're always looking to do is reduce harm to anybody else or to ourselves or to the subject we're looking for. So these are going to be areas that people are going to try to hide in. Kids, gang members, people that are part of Tren de Aragua or other violent gangs, oftentimes they're going to be found in schools. So I'm okay with it as long as they're doing it within the law.
Chuck Coughlin.
I remember when Arpaio, so I was working for Scott Smith, the mayor of Mesa, and Arpaio did a raid on City Hall in Mesa on the cleaning crews that were cleaning the city of Mesa.
Come on!
And rolled them up. And I'm like, oh, boy.
And you arrested them.
Oh, yeah. And the mayor was beside himself. And I said, calm down. Let's go have a meeting with Joe.
Yeah.
Have a conversation. Don't go rolling out in a press conference. Because, I realized how toxic the whole situation was. He did. Took his city manager down there. City manager asked for Joe's autograph at the end of the meeting. And the mayor's looking at me, what'd you do? Don't do that.
Boy.
But there is an optic to it. I think that people are.
Well, I'm curious to know what Tom Horn thinks. Tom Horn's against it. The superintendent of public instruction
did say that,
right?
didn't he?
I mean, the guy.
He didn't
he's
want
a
ICE in the
conservative
schools.
Republican.
I want to say is something along those
The
lines.
risk being that it might make some people afraid to go to school, and that it's going to make people not go to school. And his goal is to get people in a classroom, and that is that's
That's
the concern.
a real thing.
That's why he's opposed to it. That's the reason why it makes me uncomfortable as well. If there is a dangerous person in a school, I imagine it's a challenge to decide whether or not you're going to go and get them in the school or whether you want to get them afterwards. It doesn't seem like there's any sort of, I don't know what the standard is.
I've been the victim of people dictating the narrative, though. Well, you might go to the school one time. And they're like, these guys are arresting people at schools.
Okay.
So, I want to know how many times have they done it? Or are we blowing something out of proportion when the majority of these people are being caught in areas
But you acknowledge it is a fear factor with students and families that I'm not going to send my kid to school, which is the last thing we really want them to do. We want them to go to school.
Whether they're here legally or their parents aren't or whatever it might be.
We
I mean, there's a concern.
Even when we arrested the kid that was part of the Gilbert Goons at the school, we had to... There's some level of damage control that has to be done within school. We get it. And I don't think that's the ideal place that they want to go for. No. But if the only place I can find you is at school, you better believe I'm going to send my guys over to find you.
Along those lines, does it make your job harder, Sheriff Lamb, for law enforcement, if a portion of the community doesn't trust you to dial 911 when somebody steals the car or there's an assault or whatever because they're worried that law enforcement officer, the first thing they're going to ask is, are you in the country illegally? As opposed to, where was the crime?
I like to clarify that because I think that the fear is not us. The fear is they know they're in the country illegally.
Agreed.
Right.
So it's not that what we've done, it's that they are in the country illegally and they know they broke the law. And there's a potential risk that if they call us that we might deport them. It doesn't really happen. That's not, for that matter, ICE and Border Patrol wouldn't even come and pick those people up for the most part. Mm-hmm. They may now. But
the state law now makes it so that you
would
be allowed to.
The state law would make it, and we can't go out of our way. The state law is very, very narrow in what we can do. It really relates to border.
Right.
But in those cases, I have to just really clarify that, yes, it does. They do have this, there's a percentage of your population, if they're here illegally, are going to have naturally that fear. But let's really look at the root of the fear. The root of the fear is they came to this country illegally.
But this is why we need a law. I mean,
you think?
All of this.
You think we could clear this up?
Lost. It gets lost. All the fear, all the intimidation, all the he has to do his job. Everybody wants people to do their job and have a secure environment, but you can't do that until you fix our damn laws.
And we're talking about, this executive order wasn't limited to only like violent criminals. They said that they can go for anybody into the school. So that's a thing to bring up.
I'll tell you what, the war room rolls on. And coming up next, we're going to do a quick check of the headlines. We'll talk about Trump's federal aid freeze and the chaos it created yesterday. I think that might be a nice way to put it. And are people already souring on some of the early moves? We'll talk about it with our War Room panel coming up next, right here, Outspoken on KTAR.
All right, we got the second half of the War Room. Bruce and Gaydos, along with former Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb, Democratic strategist Tony Cani. We got the president and CEO of HighGround, Chuck Coughlin. First half of the War Room, a lot of immigration, border, the raids, ICE. Should they be allowed to go into churches and schools? There's a new Reuters poll, and it talks about 45% of Americans approve Trump's performance so far. 46% disapprove. Is it too much of a whirlwind that's going on right now, or is this exactly what Trump promised? It's going to be fast-paced. It's going to be chaotic. It's going to be in your face. But are Americans like, we love this? Or are they like, I'm exhausted?
It's reality TV.
I'm exhausted.
It's what he does. I mean, this is what he's going to fill us with until he runs out of gas. And it's going to continue to happen until some adult enters the room and says, okay, we got to pass a law. We actually have to do something instead of acting like third graders and
I don't
just
see any
throwing
adults.
stuff.
What's the win
Whoa. It will happen. It will happen. When
in our lifetime?
Elon Musk has invested so much money in this Doge thing, they will come out with a plan. And I'm hoping that there will be an immigration plan in there someplace too. When this, when he's feeding his narrative. That's what he's doing right now, and we're all buying it. I mean, we're chomping at the bit and reacting to it.
We're waking up. We're seeing it.
Oh my God!
We're either outraged or in love with them.
Right.
Yeah. And then at the end of the day, sometimes it gets overturned. That's what happened just yesterday. I guess the president tried to push the pause button on trillions of dollars on federal aid programs. Medicaid, Meals on Wheels, the VA, food stamps, and everybody went crazy. And they said, wait a second. I mean, from our governor to our AG, who's now suing him again. There were Republican states. There were Democratic states. They're like, wait a second.
Chambers of Commerce.
This is crazy.
Businesses.
There were individuals who were maybe a part of like medical research for cancer or whatever that they were told their treatments had to stop. Because, so like this is about real people. We call it a freeze. But really what it was is he said, maybe they didn't know how widespread it was going to be, but it doesn't matter. There was real consequences to this.
So why'd he do it? Did he do it because he wants to look at the books and say, we've got all this spending that is absolutely insane, or I can do whatever I want and I can create chaos?
A little of both. Can it be both?
Yes, it can be both.
And it creates
a lane for Elon. This is what it creates, a lane for Elon to go forward.
Explain that.
Well, he's got all these tech executives from Silicon Valley and around the world that he put NASA out of business. And so he's using those same, he took over Twitter and cut Twitter's employment population by a third. And so he's going to use that.
And it's a better product now.
Yeah. And he's going to use that skill set and do a thorough review.
Okay.
And I would expect that's where the rubber's going to
There's
hit.
another way to
And
say it, which is that
Go ahead,
they're
Tony.
cutting money from vulnerable people who rely on this money in order to
gonna find
benefit
out.
people like Elon Musk. Those are the ones who are going to be benefiting from these kinds of cuts. And so, look, there are things that probably should be cut. This isn't the way to do it. You don't tell somebody who's on Medicaid that they are no longer able to get the treatment that they need.
Well, the VA
because you needed to
website
put a
didn't
freeze.
work for a while. Like,
And look, I'm not a legislator, and so the budget stuff and all that. I mean, I've dealt with a budget as a sheriff, and I know what that is about. But for me, as an American, we all agree there is a tremendous amount of government waste. We're sending
absolutely.
$50 million over here to condoms for people in Iran. I mean, there's one thing after
that's not
another.
true, by the way. We'll argue it later. That's okay.
You
but
know,
yeah.
but I'm just throwing out examples. I mean, whether that one's true or not, we know there's an exorbitant amount of
100%.
waste, and it's not under the
Pentagon spending. I mean,
Pentagon
we
spending.
do know
So
know that, but
how do you control it if you don't say, "Hey, let me put a stop on
that's
this"?
the
real
hard
quick?
work of governing. That is the hard work of governing, not issuing an executive order and seeing where the cards end up at the end of the day.
And again, I'm just to echo what you say. I agree 100% that the federal government is bloated. And it is rife with what we call it again, waste, fraud, and abuse. Isn't that the great terminology? Where I differ from Trump is that he only wants to look at small areas, which, by the way, aren't the areas that are full of waste, fraud, and
Social
abuse.
Security, Medicare, Medicaid.
I
defense
again,
spending.
being the guy in here that thinks we should have a balanced budget, I'd wake up and go, everybody gets a 20% haircut tomorrow. Everybody, the Pentagon to Health and Human Services. You're going to
You
live
would lose
within
your
your means.
job as
I
an
get
elected
it.
official.
But the point being is we refuse to deal with the issues where the money really is getting wasted.
These budgets are approved by Congress, signed by a president.
Yeah.
And there's not been a budget. I mean, a budget that passed with Republican votes and Democratic votes. Like that's.
Well, I
that's a
think that
fact.
the government has gotten too far into areas they shouldn't be. You know, if you look down at the preamble of the Constitution, I get it. This is a very simple way of looking at it, but it defined clearly what the role of government would be. And we far exceeded that. You know, really defense is their primary thing, and there's waste there and spending there. And I know Chuck's going to bring up a much more educated view on this. I told you I'm coming at it from a guy who pays taxes who says, I don't like where you're spending the money. And I think most Americans listening to your show right now are going to say the same thing.
The problem is they don't all agree on what
Well, I
the
think
waste
there's a lot
is.
of Americans who agree with that, and then they're like, "What do you mean, Grandma? You're not able to get this treatment?"
But you
Because they
have to start
don't
the
know that this
conversation.
money is coming in from
Congress
federal
is
government.
not working.
Hasn't
There
worked in a long
is
time.
no
I
regular.
think that's
Part
fair.
of the reason why the televised Trump stuff
Right.
is important for him because people know that government isn't working, and so Trump showing
Congress
these
isn't
things-
working
Right.
because they cannot
he's
pass
exposing that.
budgets and they cannot get a regular
Well, he's
order
thinking-
process
he's
of an
happy about it.
appropriation bill.
So if you have a Republican
that's
president,
what they-
Republican House,
Senate,
Republican
House,
Senate,
there we
you should
go.
be able to pass a budget,
there
right?
you
Do
go.
it.
There you go.
think so?
You would think.
You'd think you'd want to do the hard work and the lifting of creating that order.
I know enough about politics to know that may not be true.
Hey, they were able to actually pick a speaker this time,
Somebody
so
is
that's good.
benefiting
Maybe
from
they're
chaos.
working on it. Maybe
Slightly
Republicans
ahead.
are getting better. They should
Yes.
Like some of the
That was a joke, by the way.
talk, some of the talk yesterday, I think from our mayor in Phoenix was like, hey, these are millions of dollars that goes out of the fire department. This is millions of
But
dollars
they're
that's not
always
going to be
gonna take
paid
that narrative.
to the police officers. Like it would have taken money out of your budget in Pinal County, right?
No, it would have
You don't
taken.
think so?
No, it affected HIDA.
Okay.
It's going to affect your federal law enforcement grants that we use, like Stone Garden, those types of things.
But our Attorney General Chris Mays said
But how long
yesterday.
did he freeze it? Like a day? And
Yes.
Well, I
everybody-
don't even know if it officially
Well,
went into
because of the
effect.
reaction. The reaction,
Right.
Because
made
it
of that.
was illegal.
Right, and so if there wasn't a reaction, how long
I
would
like
it
to
have
say
stayed
he's
frozen?
playing chess and checkers. I mean, look, going high, watch him buy. Going low, watch him go. If you never address it, you're never going to bring it to the table. And I think in a way, this was a way to bring this to the surface that we got a lot of problems we need to fix.
So he knew it was going to get shut. He knew the courts were going to shoot it down.
It's patently illegal.
But he wanted to do it anyway to put people.
Those courts are corrupt,
This
so-
wasn't. This
Yeah.
was fumbly. This wasn't. This didn't seem clean.
You think they
like
fumbled
that.
it? It wasn't that
Yes.
he did it on purpose and he
I'm
knew.
with him.
I think that
Okay.
I mean, they knew what they were doing, but they thought they would, they wouldn't get stopped
Okay.
and it wouldn't be as
All right.
controversial. I don't think this is some big.
I think they thought they'd get a couple weeks.
We're here inside the war room with an amazing panel. That voice was Tony Cani. We've of course got Chuck Coughlin, Sheriff Mark Lamb with us, and coming up next, the race for governor in 2026 is on. Wait, maybe we've got a candidate in the room. I'm just saying, all right?
Yep,
We're going to be talking.
Yeah, I second that.
It's not me.
We'll be talking about that.
I'm not doing it either, so it must be
All right.
it must be the sheriff.
We'll have to figure out exactly what's going on, but already they're lining up. It's coming up next. We're Outspoken here on KTAR. Inside the war room right now, former Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb, Democratic strategist Tony Cani, and the president and CEO of HighGround Incorporated. That's Chuck Coughlin. All right, we are, it's never too soon to start looking at the next election cycle, the 2026 cycle, where here in the state of Arizona, we will be voting on a governor. And it,
Sheriff Lamb, are you going to run
Do we have a candidate in the room?
governor?
So this is a rich man's profession, and I am not wealthy, so no, I have no intentions.
Okay.
All right.
by the way,
York and I live off of
Do we have a lieutenant governor in the room? Maybe we might have a lieutenant governor in the room.
I think we've had some of the other names that have been floated in the room here, and I can tell you they are decidedly rich. I can remember that, but we know that the people are lining up. Apparently, Andy Biggs recently came out with what is it? An exploratory committee? What do you call it?
He filed paperwork to indicate an interest in running for
What the hell does that mean?
You can raise money.
You can raise money.
Okay.
I think he's actually officially filed because he made the announcement at Saturday at a meeting, and I think you're legally bound. Like you have to file once you make a public announcement.
Got
like
it.
So Republicans aren't really interested in the office then.
Ouch.
Well,
You've got
so I have a lot of experience with
I got
our
a lot to say
congressman.
about that.
I have
okay.
a lot of experience
Yes,
with our
you do.
congressman because I worked for Governor Brewer
Yes.
when he was in the Senate and when he was president.
So we're
of the
talking
Senate.
Andy
State
Biggs.
Senate.
Go ahead.
Yes, and he, in order to work as a governor, you have to solve problems. You have to actually work at solving problems.
Like it's a real job.
And as in Governor Brewer had it, 30% of the state's budget wasn't there when she showed up. So she had to advocate for a sales tax increase, temporary sales tax increase. He was dead set against that. We got that passed. The voters of Arizona supported it. That was the first sign that Andy Biggs wasn't interested in governing, in working to solve problems. The second, more glaring one was Medicaid, the Medicaid restoration, where we had passed as a state twice to support 100% of the federal poverty level. Mm-hmm. The federal government said move that to 139%, and we'll pay for the whole thing. And we were going to get sued because we weren't providing that, because we had frozen that population. There was no good answers other than the one Jan chose. And he was dead set against it because he is not a problem solver. He's an ideologue, and you can see that in his record as a Freedom Caucus member. That's what he does. And he hasn't done anything in Washington to reform government. I mean, if you're against Medicaid, then you'd go back to Washington and you'd say, hey, I want to run Arizona's system, which is a capitated plan in Washington, and not do the fee-for-service model that most states do that costs the government billions of dollars. So he's never done that.
Your argument is that he's not qualified to be governor.
He's lighting the loafers.
Okay, I just wanted to get to the bottom of this.
He's got no substance.
The
Zero.
problem that you guys have as Republicans is that people can sniff when someone is not being totally genuine. And that's what's happening with Karen Taylor Robeson.
You don't think she's genuine?
Is that she has changed her position so many times. She's done this. She's gone and supported.
She got the Trump endorsement, though, didn't she?
Well, I mean, yeah, maybe she did. I mean, who knows? They say she didn't. But, and also, I don't think she's as strong of a candidate as other people do. I mean, she is a lobbyist. That's what she's doing right now. She is right now, filed paperwork, she is a lobbyist. She's a career lobbyist who's pretending like she's a government outsider. She's not. She is as inside.
She was a land use lawyer.
She's as inside as you can get, and I don't think that that's what
and her family has
people
60
want. And
years
so
of
it
public
gives
service.
Andy Biggs an opportunity, or somebody else, to run.
So Arizona Republicans, if they have a chance to vote, are going to go far right again, get through the primary, and lose in the general.
I don't know that. I'm not willing.
Well, can I ask Tony a question?
Yeah.
Do you foresee the Democrats primarying?
No, I don't. I think there's a lot of noise about that, but I don't think that's
Like I've heard the Adrian Fontes
I've been
name
wrong on this
bandied
show
about.
in a big way.
Yes, he has. He's been
So
amazingly wrong
I
before.
said Joe Biden would not step in. So write that down.
Remember that?
And then
Joe
they're like,
Biden will
you want
never
to
step
come
down.
in next week? And I was like, yeah.
At least you're only wrong on the show. I'm wrong all the time.
But I genuinely don't think so. I don't think so.
Interesting. All right. Well, it's it. We got fodder.
And I think that has a big part to play in how this election goes.
Sure.
Is whether the Democrats decide to primary their candidate.
Absolutely.
Do they see that Hobbs may be weak and not? But I think it's been 60 years since they've been able to beat a governor that was incumbent.
You guys
we're
were
a long
awesome.
way away from the end.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
we'll
be back. I mean, that's the other thing. You announce
First
now.
inning. First inning.
The reason you do this is you announce now to make people afraid to announce.
Got it.
You
There
do
you
it
go.
now to elbow other people out. That's what's happening, and there's probably some people who got elbowed out by
A great war room. Thank all of you for being here, gentlemen. Tony, Chuck, Sheriff Lamb, thank you guys. We appreciate it. We've got our check of the headlines coming up. If you missed any of the war room, by the way, go back and listen to it on the podcast.
Thanks for watching Outspoken with Bruce and Gaydos. Tap to watch more from KTAR News and click the button in the middle to subscribe.